Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu, Shri Vishnu,
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirvavati bharata abhyutanam tadatmanam srijamyaham.
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirvavati bharata abhyutanam tadatmanam srijamyaham.
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirvavati bharata abhyutanam tadatmanam srijamyaham.
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirvavati bharata abhyutanam tadatmanam srijamyaham.
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirvavati bharata abhyutanam tadatmanam srijamyaham.
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirvavati bharata abhyutanam tadatmanam srijamyaham.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam Dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Jaya Shriman Narayana. And everyone together. Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharmarashtra Jayate.
Dharmarashtra Jayate.
Suryavansha Jayate.
Surya Vansha Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
Om Hri Om. Very good. Namaste, everyone, and welcome to the latest live stream satsangha of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. It's absolutely our pleasure to be here with you, and we are coming to you from Omaha, Nebraska, USA, from what we call the Vedic Heartland, from our growing community here. And what we're going to be doing today is something somewhat special, actually. I've told people several times, I don't really recall if I've done this in a live stream before. I don't think I have. Maybe I've done this previous to the live streams. I don't remember, but this will be the first time that I will actually be commenting in a lecture on an actual purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada on a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. We will also comment on the verse as well, actually, but then we're going to go into what's a very long purport that Prabhupada wrote very long time ago, actually, in the very early 1960s. And this will go on for several weeks because the purport is very long. If you want to follow along with the purport once we read it, which won't be for a little while, I would ask that you go to the description of this video, and there wasn't room for the entire purport. Rather, we have a direct link to the purport on a different website. You can feel free to follow along on there, but we're not going to read it just yet. First, I want to talk about the nature of the Kali Yuga itself a little bit, because this is what we're going to be speaking about. This is what this verse speaks about, and the verse itself is Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 1st chapter, verse 10. And it speaks about, as well as the purport, about what is the nature of the Kali Yuga. And before I dive into even commenting on the verse and the purport, I want to talk just a little bit about what is actually the nature of the Kali Yuga itself. And I'm going to do this, just ever so slightly in depth, not very in depth, not as in depth as we obviously could go, but just a little bit of an introduction for people who either don't know that term, have never heard that term, or have heard the term, who know the term, but do not in any way understand the term. So I'll be addressing all of these people with this little bit of an introduction. First of all, the term itself. The term itself is not Latin. The term itself is not Greek. The term itself is not ancient Aramaic. The term itself, Kali Yuga, is Sanskrita, the most ancient language on the face of the earth, and that's a petty statement. Truthfully, it's the language of the gods. What to speak of being the most ancient language on the face of the earth. That's tertiary, not even secondary. But it is indeed the most ancient language on earth. It is the sacred language par excellence, over and above every other so-called sacred language upon the face of the earth. As far as why, we have videos in which I discuss what is precisely the nature of Sanskrita. But this is a term of two words in the Sanskrita language. The term Yuga very simply means age, but not just any age, not an age that someone wants to concoct. Oh, the age of reason, for example, in the history of philosophy, or the age of fill in the blank, secular concern. No, rather, Yuga means very specifically a very specific type of age. And there are 4 yugas, and I'm not going to go very deeply because I've talked about this. We are presently living in a very interesting yuga, or time cycle, an actual age. And this age, very specifically, is called Kali. Now, before I go on, let me explain for those who don't understand Sanskrita. Sanskrita is a language that operates with such absolute precision to the point where if there is a vowel, one vowel that is long versus short, it radically changes the meaning of the word. Some examples that I've given in the past is, for example, you have Rama. Now you'll see the first A is long, the second A is short, Rama. This is referring to an avatar of Narayana, very specifically, specific person, specific time period, etc., etc., etc. Now, if you take seemingly the same word, but you say Rama, now the last A is long. Now it's referring to an entirely different personality and being. It's referring to Lakshmi Devi. So again, this is the nature of Sanskrita, that it operates with such precision to the point where, oh, it's important. Now, why am I talking about all this? Well, unfortunately, people who don't know this just don't know it. The Kali that is spoken of in the Kali Yuga, very specifically, is a man. It is not the goddess Kali. Now, again, listen. Kali, Kali. With the term Kali, as in Kali Yuga, short A, short I. With the goddess, on the other hand, long A, long I. Kali, Kali. And it's unfortunate how, again, some more New Age types, even some, let's say, so-called traditionalist types, they just don't have the intelligence or the background information to understand the difference. So I've seen people literally say, oh yes, Kali Yuga is referring to the goddess, the dark goddess. They don't know what they're talking about. You can practically go up to a typical Indian Hindu on the street and ask him, is Kali in Kali Yuga referring to the goddess Kali? And he'll correct you. That's how universally understood this is within the Vedic community and Sanskritically. But again, it's unfortunate that some people will die on this hill. That no, it's referring to the goddess. And of course, these are people who know literally nothing about Vedic culture or Sanskrita. So no, Kali is a man, and indeed we have descriptions of him. He is the personification of this very specific age and the nature of this age. That is what Kali means. So Kali Yuga. Now, all that being said, what is the nature of the Kali Yuga? Again, there are 4 ages altogether. There are Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dvapara Yuga, and then Kali Yuga. And with each of these preceding ages, the understanding is, and it's the correct understanding, is that we begin with the highest of ages. That is the golden age, what's called Satya Yuga. From there, with the next age, qualitatively speaking, not just all of humanity, but the very atmosphere, the very environment itself takes a qualitative step down. It is inferior to the previous age. With the next age, Dvapara Yuga, that happens again with the age in which we are living, which is the Kali Yuga. This is now the worst of all ages. That is the understanding of, interestingly, and I've said this many times, again, anyone with a little bit of real education knows this. This is the understanding not just of quote-unquote the Hindus. This was the understanding of the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, the ancient Chinese, the ancient Japanese. This was the understanding of the ancient Egyptians. This was the understanding throughout the totality of Europe, from Ireland to the Ural Mountains. etc., etc., etc. This was the understanding of the totality of humanity up until recent times, that there is devolution that takes place qualitatively, not the opposite. So within Sanatana Dharma, of course, this is the originating point of this concept of time and the concept of the devolution of the ages, but still it was something that was universally accepted as a part of Dharma, or the natural way. Any ancient culture that taught the natural way, natural law, natural order, indeed believed this concept, which again is true and factual, that we devolve age after age after age. So right now, again, for the last roughly a little bit more than 5,100 years, we have been in this age known as the Kali Yuga. And that's been translated in several different ways. Prabhupada himself translates it as the age of iron, which is accurate, actually. I like to translate it with a little bit more philosophical precision. It is the age of conflict. That is what the Kali Yuga is. And indeed, this is the hallmark of what we see in this age. Again, people who like to play with these terms but don't quite have a Vedic understanding, which is where the term Kali Yuga comes from, they'll have different sorts of speculations as far as, what is the spirit of our age? What is the zeitgeist? What is the spirit of our age? And they'll come up with different things, and sometimes they're close to correct, sometimes they are quite correct, sometimes they're wrong. But this is indeed the spirit of our age. Is Virodhavardhanavada. That is the idea of there being conflict constantly within the Kali Yuga. Dharma, on the other hand, being the opposite of conflict, being the idea that you take the diversity that we see around us and you harmonize it in such a way that you create something truly beautiful. That's Dharma. In the Kali Yuga, unfortunately, the idea and more the spirit of this age is very much the opposite. Again, it's the idea that we have nothing but conflict. Now, all that being said, indeed, it's interesting how, and I do need to speak about this, because I know I have a lot of individuals in my audience who consider themselves to be traditionalists, either capital T or small t. And I do need to address this a little bit because it's crucial. It's something that has to be spoken about for a little while. And that is, there is something called the traditionalist, now capital T, school of thought. I am not a follower of the traditionalist school in any way whatsoever, but I am a traditionalist, small t. That is, I follow Sanatana Dharma as it is traditionally and authentically taught within the Vedic scriptures. However, there is something somewhat concocted beginning, roughly in the 1920s. One can argue slightly before then, maybe around World War I, something like that, which is now its own sect. And it's interesting, all these universalisms start out as so-called universalisms, and then they become actually a sect, like radical universalism, like Neo-Hinduism. It started off with this idea that no, all religions are one, and now it's actually its own, if you could call it thought, its own school of thought. Well, the traditionalist school of René Guénon, of Julius Evola, of other individuals like this, many of who were wonderful individuals. I've read almost all of their works that are available in the English language, and they fulfilled a very nice function in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. And that is that they encountered the excesses, indeed the demonic qualities of modernity, and they provided a necessary critique at that time in accordance with the very limited knowledge and experience that they had. Unfortunately, what these individuals ended up doing, and especially you see that this now, after many decades have gone by, is that they took what was a valid critique of modernity and they've made it into a sect. They've made it into, indeed, the traditionalist, capital T, school. And, you either are a follower of that or you're not. And of course, sadly, it itself has led to a type of radical universalism, where the idea of such individuals, and again, I hope people don't misunderstand. I've read the work, almost all the works of these traditionalist authors, and they had a lot of good things to say. Again, they had critiques that were necessary in their time. However, this is the point, is that they made several terrible mistakes. And I don't mean for this to be a critique of the traditionalist school. At some point, maybe I'll do that, but it'll be a full hour lecture. I'm just mentioning this just off the cuff. The unfortunate mistake that they made was to invent something that was never there. That is another form of radical universalism. Indeed, one could say that, sadly, such individuals were products truly of their time. René Guignon, Julius Evola, they were products of their time. And what was the big craze in the West, in Europe, in America? Again, very late 19th century, but then early 1900s, 19-teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, etc. It was the idea of radical universalism. The idea of somehow trying to force all religions into a form of oneness. Sadly, the radical traditionalists, the traditionalist school, so-called, fell into the same trap. So thus, the conclusion that many of them come to is that all the religions indeed are one, and there is some sort of vast, mysterious, hidden tradition that you find therein that you are meant to uncover. But really, all religions are pointing to the same thing. All religions are pointing to something that is radically esoteric, that only the radical traditionalists themselves have the intelligence to discern, etc., etc. So it becomes another form of radical universalism. So why do I mention all this? It's very simply for this point, that sadly many individuals today who read the works of such individuals, such radical traditionalists, they also have heard this term, Kali Yuga, Kali Yuga, Kali Yuga, again and again and again. And sadly, to the point where when they hear the term, and again, I've been among such circles for 25 years or so, something like that. When such individuals mention such terms, oh yes, the Kali Yuga, they are speaking of these terms in, let's say, just to pick probably the most famous of the radical traditionalists, they use such a term in an Evolian sort of sense. That is, they quite literally think that Julius Evola created the term Kali Yuga, not understanding that he himself, to his credit, he was a very honest man. Again, I like Evola quite a bit, actually. He was a very honest person. He himself writes again and again. He makes it quite clear that he didn't invent this term. This is a term from what he, again, being a dated individual, would call Hinduism. That's how they knew this path in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. And he wrote, or he was active all the way up until the early 70s. But at least he was quite honest in his writings. He made it clear that, no, this is a Sanskrit term. It is a term from the Vedic tradition, from quote-unquote Hinduism, etc. But it still astounds me to this day how many latter day, that is, as of today, so-called followers of the traditionalist school, they think Kali Yuga, this term, somehow has something to do with the traditionalist school, that it kind of arose from there. It has nothing to do with the traditionalist school. This is a term that was used for quite literally millions of years before René Guignon, Julius Evola, or any of these individuals were alive. This is a term of Sanatana Dharma, and that is the point I'm making. If an individual out there, let's say you are a so-called perennialist or a follower of the traditionalist school, and you truly want to understand what is meant by all of these important Sanskrit terms, including Kali Yuga, stop reading modern authors. No, read them. It's nice. It's fun. Again, you get modern critiques that are not necessarily there in the Vedic scriptures because they're beneath the Vedic scriptures. To talk about video games, for example, to talk about the, things that are going on in today's day and age. So it's good to read modern books to get modern critiques. Indeed, I do the same thing, but that's secondary. If you truly want to understand what is meant by such terms as Kali Yuga, in other words, go to the scriptures. Go to the scriptures, go to the scriptures, and secondarily, also read the works of such individuals who comment purely and in an unadulterated manner upon the Vedic scriptures. This is how you will know what Kali Yuga means. And for that matter, every Sanskrit word. You want to understand what karma means. Such a simple word thrown around every single day. There's no human being probably on the face of the earth who hasn't heard this term at this point. And very few people understand it, of course. You want to understand what this term karma means? No, don't go to some New Age author. Don't go to some New Age content provider on YouTube or anywhere else. understand this term in terms of its origin. Its origin is not the 60s. What is the origin of yoga? It's not the 60s. What's the origin of meditation and vegetarianism? They're not the 60s, etc., etc. What is the origin of Kali Yuga? It's not the traditionalist capital T school. Go to the origin, go to the origin, go to the origin. Only if you're serious. If you're not, then keep playing. Again, this is for people who, they don't just say, oh yes, I want to know the truth, Evola this and Kali Yuga that. No. If you truly want to know the truth in an unadulterated sort of way, go to the origin, go to the origin, go to the origin. It's that simple. Now, all that being said, we're now going to dive into the verse for today. And given the time, I'm looking at the time, this is what I believe we're going to do. Again, we're going to do this over the course of quite a few weeks, actually. Don't ask me how many weeks. Could be 4, it could be more than 4. But what we're going to do today is, first we're going to deal with the verse. I'm going to read the verse, comment on the verse, and then maybe at that time, if there is a little bit of time, we will take some questions from the audience. Then next week, we are going to read this massive purport that is here by Prabhupada, and for the next several weeks especially, we're going to go through it. Very good. So with that, again, we're looking at Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is first canto, first chapter, and verse 10. And it proceeds in this way. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men almost always have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. So how interesting, how amazing. This is a very nice description, of which there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, actually, of descriptions, of verses that describe the nature of the Kali Yuga. And it's interesting, you can find such descriptions throughout the totality of the Vedic scriptures. You can find such descriptions certainly in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but other Puranas as well. Almost all the Puranas, actually, interestingly, describe the nature of the Kali Yuga. You can find such descriptions in Mahabharata and Ramayana. Again, so many places throughout the totality of the scriptures. But what this is describing is indeed the zeitgeist, the very spirit of our age. What is the nature of this age in which we're living? And again, please keep in mind something else I have to say. I should have said this earlier, but let me say it now. The Kali Yuga lasts for, and please take note of this, this is the time period. This is not speculation. This is not someone's opinion. This is stated again and again and again throughout the totality of the Vedic scriptures, this exact number. The duration of the Kali Yuga is 432,000 years. Not 10,000, not 5,000, etc. Again, this is a product of truly modernity, meaning the last roughly 150 years, that there are some people who know nothing, and they started to say that, oh no, the age of the Kali Yuga is much, much, much shorter. Actually, the Kali Yuga is about to end right now in our lifetime, or it's going to end starting in about 200 years. They'll come up with all sorts of speculation. And when they're challenged, yes, sir, can you show one verse of a total of millions of verses throughout the totality of the Vedic scriptures? Can you show me one that says that? And of course they never can. They'll change the topic. They'll start talking about something else. They'll try to make something up, some so-called metaphysical gobbledygook that means nothing, etc. Just, making things up as they go along to cover themselves. And then conversely, we'll show them hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of verses that give the exact duration of the Kali Yuga, 432,000 years. This is how long it lasts. And where are we now? We are a little bit over 5,100 years into the Kali Yuga. We're barely at the beginning. And it's important to understand this because oh, we live in an age of smallness today. We live in an age where everyone desires things to be small conceptually and in scope. Why? Because anything too grand scares people today. So this is why, again, it's not surprising that it's only been in the last roughly 150 years that, oh, it's appealed to people. Oh, no, this horrible dark age is only going to last for a few hundred years. And, oh, it's going to last for 5,000 years and then it's over. It's digestible to people. So that's why when people make things up like that, people find it appealing. But the idea of vastness in scope almost scares people. It's kind of like the idea of, oh yes, there's a little hillock over there, meaning, oh, it's maybe 100 feet high, and oh yes, we're going to try to get to the top and have a picnic up there. Versus, you go to Nepal, you fly to Nepal, you fly from, let's say, New York to London, London to Delhi, you fly from Delhi to Kathmandu. From there, you take whatever conveyance you can, and you come to the very edge of Mount Everest. And you look up at it. Big difference. Well, fantasy is the hillock, where, oh, let me go up there and, oh, I'll have a little picnic, versus the grandness of reality. Reality is grand. Think of the size of our universe. Think of if you needed to walk, let's look at contiguous continents. Let's say if you had to walk, from Normandy in France to the very edge of Siberia, that would take you more than a day. That's vast. That would take you a very long time, a lot of sacrifice. So in the same way, it's easy for people to want to believe that, oh yes, the Kali Yuga lasts for just a few thousand years. Oh, and then it's over and it's paradise, and we can all sit around and play video games and relax at that point. Versus the reality, which is no, things have been extremely bad, have they not? Well, for those who are awake and know this, yes, things have been bad in the world. And we're only 5,100 years into the Kali Yuga. And within that scope of that total of 432,000 years of the Kali Yuga, there are ups and downs, but the general trajectory is that you're going down. And that for a lot of individuals is scary. The scope of this, that this is such is the nature of time that you're talking about, especially when you deal with something like the Vedic scriptures. You're dealing with vast amounts of time. Indeed, a yuga is short. You have yugas, you have mahayugas, you have kalpas, you have so many different time measurements that go into the domain of trillions, with a T, of years. Trillions of years. If you look at time measurement in Sanatana Dharma, it's mind-boggling. And then, interestingly, the converse as well. You have kshama, you have moments of a moment of a moment of a moment of a moment as well. And that's the nature of Sanatana Dharma. It works with such precision and with such grandiosity, with such magnitude as well. So all that being said, we are at the very beginning of the Kali Yuga. Things have progressed, or I should say have devolved very quickly in the last roughly 5,100 years for people who really have an eye to watch how history has devolved. It's truly amazing. It's been fast and exponentially so. We have seen that, I'm 61 years old, so I've been alive for a few generations. I was born in 1963. In 1963, America was a civilized nation, and we saw that, they killed Kennedy, there was a coup d'etat, we saw that Lyndon Baines Johnson took over, and from that moment, exponentially things went down to the point where now we have things that I would be censored if I even give you a list of how bad, how degenerate things have become in 2025 now. So indeed, this is the nature of the Kali Yuga. It is a very challenging age. It is an age in which to be spiritual is extremely difficult, to be authentically spiritual. However, and this is the last thing I'm going to say before we truly take a nice look at this verse. However, this is the thing that we have to keep in mind. As I've said it again and again, and not just me, many sages have said this. This is in the scriptures of Sanatana Dharma, Brahma Vaivarta Purana, many other places, Bhavishya Purana, etc. Despite the fact that things have been going down, we are going to have a mini golden age. And according to both the Puranas and Prabhupada, it will last for 10,000 years. We're going to have a 10,000 year golden age. And when does it begin? Again, speculation. When does it begin? It's begun. We're in it. Oh, but wait, where are all the flying vehicles that people are supposed to have, and where are the golden temples that were supposed to spring up out of the ground and descend from the heavens? Wait, but again, that's for not serious people. Such ideas are for not serious people. It's understood because the Vedic scriptures explain the process themselves. The way that ages occur, it's not magic. It's not that, we're all of humanity is 1 inch away from destruction, and now suddenly we're in paradise, literally at the snap of a finger. It's not how it happens. Rather, transitions necessarily are somewhat slow, but they do take place and they are happening. So, indeed, we're at the beginning of the mini golden age that we are going to experience. And for those who are intelligent and looking around them, seeing everything that's happening in the news, everything that's happening, especially if you look at real news and you actually know what's happening in the world, you see it. We see things at this point. It used to be a few times a year, starting a few years ago. It used to be a few times a year, then a few times a month, then a few times a week. Now it's almost several times a day we see things happening. Where some people, as they're watching the news, again, real news, their mouths just drop to the floor. They can't believe these things are happening. And they're good. So indeed, we are in the beginning of a golden age. It will take a little bit more time before we see it fully manifest. How much more time? Years. It'll take years. But we're in a golden age now. Mini golden age within the context of the Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga goes on for quite some time. Now, let's look at this verse a little bit. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men almost always have but short lives. Indeed, this is the case. It is interesting how when you look at all ancient cultures, and again, all of them, they all explain that in previous eras, people lived much longer than they do now. Much, much longer. Indeed, in the last age, which ended again around 5,200 years ago, something like that. In the previous age, the Dvapara Yuga, people lived for sometimes 1,000 years. They certainly lived for hundreds of years. But then that decreased until we reached the early part, very early part of the Kali Yuga, meaning roughly 4,500 years ago, something like that, to 4,000 years ago. And then what did we see? That people began to reach what is meant to be the standard age for individuals within the Kali Yuga, which is what? Let me test my disciples. What is supposed to be the standard age for people in the Kali Yuga?
100 years?
Yes, 100 years. So it's interesting. What have we seen? How many people live to be 100 years old today? Oh, not many. Not many. But at one time, again, especially during the beginning part of the Kali Yuga, people lived for a very, very, very old age. Not anymore. Now people, if you're in the industrialized West, as they like to call it, people will live to be 70, 72, 75, maybe 80. If you reach 80, you're considered to be very, very lucky. But how many people reach beyond that? How many people are in their 90s, 95, 99? Not many. How many people get past 100? Not many at all. Yes, I know what you're thinking.
I was there too.
Unless, yes, everyone had the same thought in their mind. Unless you're talking about, indeed, the Social Security Administration, for which apparently, and I forget the exact numbers, but apparently there are millions of people living in America today who are 200 years old.
Oh, goodness.
That aside, very few people live to be 100 years old. Very, very few people. So indeed, that is what this sentence is saying, but now let's go on. Speaking about the nature of people within the Kali Yuga. They are quarrelsome. There's the conflict. There's the conflict. Virodha. Virodha means conflict. That there are individuals who will be quarrelsome with each other. Argumentation. You see, another reason why we don't engage in debate. Because this is the age of debate, but insincerely so, dishonestly so. And indeed, there is there are quarrels in our age, there's conflict in our age. And interestingly, understanding this fact, many evil people will indeed take advantage of this fact, and they will encourage conflict. And in some cases, just in a very conniving way, just for their own purposes, they'll encourage people to conflict, and then somehow they swoop in and profit from that. Evil leaders and politicians throughout the ages have been like that. They'll cause even their own people to fight against each other, and then that evil, corrupt leader will sweep in, I will solve this problem. But then this began to be organized in more philosophical form, in the form of Marxism. I call Marxism specifically Virodha Vardhanavada. That is the idea, the philosophy of growth through conflict. That is what Marxism is, the idea that, there must be conflict, class conflict, gender conflict, conflict between different religions, between the ages, between generations, etc. And in that way, the Marxists sweep in and take over while everyone else is fighting with each other. So indeed, this is an age of conflict. So people today are quarrelsome. People today are lazy. How much time do we have to discuss this? Indeed, we have seen that this has become the case, like I said, exponentially so. Again, as someone who I have enough memory to remember some parts of the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, etc., all throughout the 2000s. I myself have seen that the further you go back, even within that short time frame, forget about 5,000 years, no, 60 years, the further back you go, the more hardworking people were, and without excuse. Now, everyone, even young men who are 30 years old, have every single excuse humanly conceivable. They use all of their energy that they could be doing working. They use all their energy searching, mining for excuses for why they shouldn't actually do something. All that energy that they use looking for excuses, they could have put that energy actually to good work. But instead, this is how they want to use their energy. We see this especially now in the era of video games, where indeed, as a result of video games that have depleted people of their power, of their Shakti, now we have an entire generation of individuals for whom doing serious work, working on something that is of importance to you, a career, a mission, something, is next to impossible. People have become incredibly lazy. Now, let's go on. Misguided. Oh yes, this is another hallmark of the Kali Yuga, where people are indeed extremely misguided. What's meant by misguided? In many cases, it is not the fault of those individuals who are misguided. I've talked about this many, many times, but in different contexts. But now I'm going to bring it back in speaking about the nature of the Kali Yuga and the individuals inhabiting the Kali Yuga. People are misguided, meaning what? They're confused. They don't know what direction to go in. And this means in every aspect of existence. Certainly the loftier aspects, as far as philosophy, religion, etc., people are so confused. So many voices out there telling me this is truth, that's truth. They're misguided as far as how to live, as far as what is the ethical thing to do. They're misguided as far as even popular opinion about what is real music, what is real culture versus entertainment, what is actual information versus fake news, etc., etc., etc. People are misguided today. But again, it's not 100% their fault. We are to blame not the victims, but the victimizers. Why are people misguided? People are misguided because there is quite literally a veritable army of tens of thousands, that's putting it lightly, probably hundreds of thousands, of voices that are out there designed to misguide people. And this is true again in the realm of politics, religion, opinion, culture, business, science, every sphere, every sector that we can possibly mention in which information is provided to the innocent public. And what do we see? Those sources of information tend to be individuals who are dishonest. Again, we're on YouTube, which is a wonderful venue, but let's use YouTube as an example. You can look up and pick a word by which you'll get the broadest category. Let's say you can look up Hinduism or yoga spirituality. So in that way you'll get thousands and thousands of channels, as opposed to something very specific, like Vedic or Sanatana Dharma. Sadly, this is true for those two terms as well. But you can do a search on any of these terms. You will find thousands of channels, the vast majority of which, of course, are providing malinformation, bad information about the topic of Sanatana Dharma, the Vedic tradition, etc. And why? Why is this the case? Well, those individuals who are providing the information, whoever they are, some person in New York just dressed in a very normal American sort of way with a bookcase of books behind him in front of a fireplace, whatever, and he's spewing on about Neo-Vedanta and non-dualism and oneness, all the way up to grand swamis with hair down to here, and I wear one strand of beads, I can have 10 strands of beads, etc., and droning on and on about what they think Vedanta is. You'll have thousands and thousands of such individuals, then the New Age types and category after category. And sadly, they're all saying different things. None of them agree because none of them know anything. So indeed, when we talk about individuals in the Kali Yuga being misguided, it's not really the fault of the typical individual just very innocently trying to get information about things that are of importance. Oh, health-wise, oh my Lord. Yeah, that's another category. You can look up some aspect of health. You'll get 10,000 channels that all give you conflicting information. Everything from extremely mainstream information about medicine to extremely alternative. They all disagree with each other. And again, these are the individuals who are to be blamed for the fact that the public has been misguided. Those individuals who set themselves up as leaders, who set themselves up as teachers, and really are providing so-called information more than anything to fill their pockets. So indeed, the people in the Kali Yuga are misguided. Let's go on. Unlucky. Now this is interesting. This is interesting. What is meant by unlucky? Why are the individuals of the Kali Yuga unlucky? Well, first of all, by unlucky is meant something very different from what it's meant in the common Western sense. By unlucky, what is meant is the idea of chance. You see, you play dice. You kind of throw dice and, oh, I lost, I was unlucky. The odds were against me, something like that. So it's just kind of left up to the arbitrary will of chance. That is not what is meant by exactly how Prabhupada translates this as unlucky. Rather, what's meant is unfortunate. Unfortunate. The individuals of the Kali Yuga are unfortunate. Why is this the case? Because we were born in the Kali Yuga. Individuals who are here for a reason. The vast majority of individuals who are within the Kali Yuga are here because, indeed, indirectly, they chose to be here. That is, it was their karma. To be born in an age in which to practice spirituality is the most difficult of things. So it's a misfortune in a way. Interestingly, however, we need to also say this, because there are verses in the Vedic scriptures where, oh yes, sometimes it says we are unfortunate to be here in this time. But then at other times, interestingly, it also says that we are in a way fortunate to be here. Yeah. Why is this the case? Because while it is the age with the most challenges, it's also an age in which, because of the very fact that we need to face these challenges, we have the ability to grow spiritually in this age unlike any other age previous. We have the ability, facing all of these challenges, literally staring into the darkness, we have the ability to also grow spiritually and to face that darkness fearlessly. So we have the ability to be here in this age of everything that we've described, everything that we've talked about, so much degeneracy, etc., etc., but at the same time ourselves making the choice that, oh yes, despite the fact that it seems like everyone around me is unintelligent, just kind of goes along with what they're told, etc., etc., I have the ability to, while living within the context of the Kali Yuga, inwardly live as if I am actually living in the Satya Yuga, the Golden Age. And that is a path for, indeed, a small minority of individuals, but it is the heroic path to say that despite the fact that the main current of society is going this way, and everyone's just being carried along by the river, helplessly seemingly. You know, in some cases they just kind of let themselves go and they just float along with wherever the river's taking them. There are some individuals who choose to stand up, even while being within that river, and say, no, I'm not going in that direction. And as you're doing that, some NPC is floating by. What do you think you're doing? Get with the program. And you say, no, thank you. No. Despite all the NPCs shouting at you, asking, what are you doing? You can't do that. Yes, I can. I can stand up for truth. And when an individual has the ability to do that within the Kali Yuga, it gives us a strength that is insurmountable. It gives us a strength that is unimaginable. Who are the serious members and followers of the International Sanatana Dharma Society? These are the individuals who have stood up and resisted the river. That's who we are. That's who the individuals are. What is the International Sanatana Dharma Society itself? It is the massive ship upon which now all these people ride on their way to Vaikuntha. This is the vehicle, quite literally. So, this is who we are, the International Sanatana Dharma Society. Not me, I'm nothing. My disciples are the lights of this world. Within this age of darkness, they are the lights that will show you the way to that ultimate light. That ultimate light being Sriman Narayana. And let's finish this up. And above all, those inhabitants of the Kali Yuga are always disturbed. Very sad. Again, a test that everyone should know. What does Vaikuntha mean? What's the literal translation? Yes, please. No anxiety. Very good. Everyone knew. No anxiety. And people should know this too. What is the main experience of the Kali Yuga? Anxiety. Very good. So such people are always disturbed. What's another way of saying that? You know, you're in anxiety. That's why you're disturbed. When we are in the Kali Yuga, who today, other than, again, there are a few, blessed individuals, who are not disturbed even in this age, but the majority of individuals, who of them are not disturbed? Who is not experiencing anxiety? You experience it every day. You hear people who experience it every day. We have an entire economic system based upon this, where there are pharmaceuticals that are given to people because of anxiety. There are spas and massage places everywhere where, let me massage the anxiety out of you. Come do this, come do that, have a therapy for you. Yes, there's an entire billion-dollar industry of therapy, psychotherapy, etc., because people have anxiety. You know, people used to go places to enjoy the places in nature. Now, also in the back of people's minds, it's, oh my God, I'm going to die of anxiety here in New York City. Let me get out to the Poconos and see some nature. I'm from New York, so my parents would sometimes drive us to the Poconos, and it was always beautiful. But it's amazing how anxiety is constantly there. It's that invisible thing, which you can't see anxiety. You can see the effects of it. You can see the effects on people's faces, how they speak to one another, etc. But you can't see anxiety itself. And yet it's ever present in this day and age. Not just America, but the entire, certainly industrialized West. You know, that should give you a hint that it's the industrialized West. Yes, that's when anxiety really began on the scale that it is now. But you have anxiety throughout the world now. People are worried about everything. People are struggling just to pay their bills, etc. So as a result, everyone's always disturbed within the Kali Yuga. So this is the nature of our age, indeed. And we need to be very realistic about this. As I'm saying all this, of course, I am fully aware that speaking about the nature of the Kali Yuga in a very realistic sort of way can sound a little bit pessimistic. It can sound quite black-pilled. But this is the sign of a wise individual. You have to have the ability to look at the reality of a situation, even if it's bad, but then also understand how to transcend that situation, what to do in that situation, such that even though the situation is negative, you are positive and you are growing spiritually. So again, this is why I said a few moments ago that, yes, we need to understand what is the nature of this age, but at the same time, we also need to understand that there are individuals in this age and their number is increasing. Why? There are reasons why that I don't even have time to go into now. Maybe in the future someone can ask me that and then I'll give a detailed answer. The number of intelligent and good and spiritually inclined people has been increasing. Interestingly, at the same time that the conditions have been getting worse, the number of spiritual and real people, authentic people, has been also increasing. This also is why we're in the midst of a golden age, because there are now enough of them to ensure the success of a golden age. But this is what is interesting. Even again in the midst of this darkness, we are to choose the light. And we can. See, God's mercy is omnipresent. Doesn't matter where or when we find ourselves. God's mercy is omnipresent. All we need to do is, even in the darkest of ages, just turn to God. Just turn to God, just turn to God with sincerity, with humility, with devotion, with openness. And saying this in pure goodness, in pure sincerity. God, I surrender unto you. I am here for you. Please, you show me the way. Let me do what your will is, not merely my will anymore. I've spent the totality of my life following my will, and I've had nothing but misguidedness, quarrels, being disturbed, anxiety, etc., etc. Now, let me surrender to your will. When we do this, what we find is that, is the Kali Yuga going to just disappear before our eyes? No, not literally. Objectively, it's still the Kali Yuga, but subjectively, that is within, we are living as if we are living in the greatest of ages. I've said this before, even in the midst of the Kali Yuga, live as if you are a denizen of the Satya Yuga, as much as possible. And that being the case, you will have the opposite of these things. You won't have conflict, you'll have harmony. You won't be lazy, you'll be empowered. You won't be misguided, you'll have jnana, you'll have true knowledge and wisdom. You won't be unfortunate, on the contrary. The goddess of fortune, so to speak, Lakshmi Devi herself, will smile upon you. And you will not be disturbed. You will have the opposite of anxiety. You will have no anxiety. You will have Vaikuntha. So indeed, this is how we as individuals and as communities, actually, of devotees, can be still even within the midst of the Kali Yuga. But really, we are living as if we are in the Satya Yuga. Indeed, the Satya Yuga is a step down for us. We will be living as if we are in Vaikuntha, the very kingdom of God himself. Very good. Beautiful verse, very nice verse. But we will stop here for now because I do want to take some questions from people. Again, the next time we get together, I'm going to read this very long purport by Prabhupada on this verse, and then I will be commenting on Prabhupada's purport, where he describes the Kali Yuga perfectly, actually. So with that, again, let me see if there are any questions whatsoever, either from our online audience, from individuals here, or whoever would like to ask. Very good. I see some wonderful individuals here, many people who I recognize, and as always from throughout the world. I see people here from the UK, from Germany, everywhere, all over the place. Very good. Namaste, Marius, I see you. Wonderful that you're here. I see people from all over the United States, again, more from the UK, from Canada, literally from everywhere. But let me see what some of the questions are. There are some questions here now. Very nice. Here is a very nice question that I can answer pretty quickly. Namaste, Sri Acharyaji. Are there any books you recommend that describe the appearance or Leela of Venkateshwara? There are indeed, sadly, I can't remember the name. There are several Puranas that talk about the life of Venkateshwara. I'm sorry, not the life, the description of his appearance upon the earth. Sadly, I can't remember exactly which ones because there are 36 Puranas altogether. I've read them all, but you can imagine there's a lot of information contained therein. But look to the Puranas and you'll find the actual story of Venkateshwara, of his appearance. So, I'm sorry if that's not too helpful because, again, there are 36 Puranas, but that's as clear of an answer as I can give you. Very good. Here is a question. Namaste. Thank you for this wonderful live stream. How do we overcome, I think you mean like the challenge of surrendering completely to God? My illusioned mind tries to convince me that I'm giving up freedom. Yes, indeed. Indeed. This is why, let me talk about this for a second. You know, even you know, I know who you are, who asked the question. You always, you're a wonderful supporter of the ISDS. You always ask very good questions. I've answered this a few times, but let me go a little bit deeper, actually. And that is, I've actually said to people that surrendering to God, that is prapatti, the actual act of self-surrender to God, is interestingly the most difficult thing to do in all of creation. Again, I've said this again and again, many, many times. And the reason why that is the case is because it is our very purpose. It is literally our key to freedom within this world. That being the case, if it was something easy, well, then everybody would be able to do it. But indeed, why are individuals within the material world in the mode of ignorance to begin with? Why is it that people are in illusion to begin with? Because people have chosen the very opposite of this surrender. Because rather than surrendering to God, we have chosen to surrender to an artificial sense of self, to what is called ahankara, or false ego. This is what we've chosen. So that being the case, since we put ourselves in this prison by choosing to surrender to a fake self, what is the actual key to freedom? It's the very opposite of that. That is, to surrender instead to God, to that which is the self of ourself. And this being the case, this is difficult, because it's the very highest thing that we are meant to do. So indeed, many individuals find this to be a very, very difficult thing to do. So this is why I've also said that the process of surrender is not a matter of something that just happens instantaneously. It is a process. It is the process of surrender. And how do we how do we cultivate this process? How do we practice this process? It's by doing everything that we're doing, spiritually speaking. It is by reforming ourselves. It is by practicing yoga, practicing meditation in such a way that we look within, we find those anartas, those things that are negative, that we don't want to have within us, negative ways of thinking, negative ways of being, negative actions that we can perform. We want to rid ourselves of those on the one hand, but then positively, we want to grow those positive aspects, those positive attributes that we see there within as much as possible. This is sadhana. This is daily meditation. This is studying the Vedic scriptures. This is trying to live our life in such a way that we live our life as a meditation. What happens is, by doing this whole sadhana process, we come to the point where prapatti is less and less and less fearful to us. The idea of surrender becomes something that is more natural to us. And indeed, you stated very well here, my illusion mind tries to convince me that I'm giving up freedom. You said that perfectly. That's the illusion. That's the illusion. Oh, I want to be free. And what does that mean? I'm going to drink enough alcohol that eventually it's going to kill me. I want to be free to take all the heroin and meth that I want until it eventually kills me. I want to be free to, and then fill in the blank. This is the nature of illusion. People think this is freedom. To choose always those things that really long term in one way or another, multiple ways, are really going to harm us. That's the illusion. I want to be free, meaning I have to always be in the driver's seat no matter what. Even though I don't know the destination, I don't have a map. And I have someone sitting next to me who has both. And rather than just quote-unquote surrendering and saying, I have literally no idea where we're going or how to get there, but I know you do. Can you guide me? That takes a little humility. And that's just with a person. Then what to speak of with God? No, it is in surrendering to God that we actually gain all of our freedom, not the opposite. How do we know this? It's one thing to just say this, but this is actually very easily provable. Look at the lives of those individuals who did surrender to God throughout history, whether they are mentioned in the actual Vedic scriptures. Look at someone like Ramanuja Acharya, Vedanta Deshika, look at Prabhupada, look at all these individuals who, we have their life story, we know who they were, how they lived, what their personalities were like. What we see is that those individuals who surrender to God actually have nothing but freedom. It is those individuals who surrender to God who they have empowerment, they have Shakti, their personality, if anything, doesn't shrink. This is another stereotype that people have, that, the more I surrender to God, my personality will just kind of shrink and shrink and shrink in the face of God. It's actually the opposite. The more you surrender to God, the more your true personhood as Atman comes out. That's why you want to meet the most interesting, charismatic, colorful people on the face of the earth. Talk to a devotee, a Vaishnava, who has surrendered to God. And you'll find someone amazing. And on and on. No, it's the more that we surrender, that now, what are we doing? Speaking of freedom, we are locked in chains because our false ego is dictating to us to do all those things that are going to harm us. Again, when we have a choice, I can eat a healthy diet of, I can have a salad, I can have fruits, I can have delicious, wonderful curries and nutritious foods. I'll eat this food and afterwards I'll feel wonderful. I will know I had a delicious meal, but I will have nutrients such that I have energy. I can choose that, or I can go to McDonald's and have a Big Mac. Have dead food. Well, the ego will tell us, eat the Big Mac. Why? Because it tastes good. Quote unquote. Interestingly, the more you eat healthy food, the better healthy food tastes to you actually. But in illusion, we think, would I like a salad or a Big Mac? Well, a Big Mac would quote unquote taste better. That's an illusion, that's a lie. The salad actually tastes better. So again and again, we have these choices. We can surrender to illusion and thus to activities that actually will keep us enslaved. Why? You eat the Big Mac every day. Try eating nothing but, people have done it, we know, there have been documentaries where they'll eat nothing but McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and afterwards they're 50 pounds overweight and they feel like they're going to die because they're so unhealthy. But that's the ego. Oh, I'm free to eat all the Big Macs. Yeah. Is that really freedom when we're really only harming ourselves? Versus follow that right path where, yes, it requires some so-called sacrifice. I'm not going to have the Big Mac. I'm going to eat healthy food. But at the end of the day, give myself a few weeks, a few months, a few years following a good path, a path without ego, and I will feel like I can conquer the world. I'll feel so peaceful, so energetic, so vibrant, so healthy, so alive, etc. This is the nature of egoic slavery versus dharmic freedom. The more we surrender to God, indeed, the more freedom we have, because we now have accessed our true self, without ego, without shadow, without lies. And we are now embracing the truth. Indeed, what is the nature of true freedom? It is to embrace truth and to operate as a result of knowing truth. When you're operating as a result of operating in ignorance, you're a slave. It is when you operate in truth that you are now free. And what is that truth? God is truth. God is truth. And satyameva jayate. Truth alone prevails. Good. So I hope that answers the question for you. Give me a few moments and I'm going to just look at a few more of these questions that are here. Yes, very good comment here, actually. J.R.R. Tolkien's Island of Numenor is also a very good analogy to the degradation of the Yugas. Oh, yes, indeed. You see, of course, you have the four ages even in Lord of the Rings. In all of Tolkien, actually. And that's quote-unquote fiction. Then what to speak of all the ancient epics of the world? Yes, you find that the Yugas universally in the ancient world. The ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, again, I can mention all these ancient civilizations. They all knew about the Yugas, and they all knew that civilization devolves, not evolves. Very good. Give me a few more moments to just look at these questions here. Very nice. Here's a nice question. Namaste Acharyaji, do you believe that authentic Dharma could be implemented politically in the USA, given that it is primarily and predominantly a Christian country? Very nice question, and let me answer this. Actually, I have spoken the equivalent of thousands and thousands and thousands, actually, of hours about this topic. Some of it caught on video and released to the public, 99% of it not. But I have written a book called the Dharma Manifesto that speaks very specifically about this. And in that book, indeed, I provide precisely, in the strict nature of this term, a political manifesto. Very philosophical, but also very practical as far as policies. Manifesto, talking about how, indeed, we are going to witness multiple Dharma nations throughout the totality of the world. India, oh sure, it's going to happen in India. Nepal, oh yes, it's going to happen in Nepal. It's going to happen in all the places that people commonly think of today when they associate the term Dharma with one or two contemporary nations. But no, we're going to see this in the United States of America. We're going to see this in Canada. We're going to see this throughout the length and breadth of Europe. We're going to see this in Australasia. We're going to see this in multiple nations throughout the world. So you ask, do I believe authentic Dharma could be implemented politically in the USA? Absolutely, it can. As far as how and why, that would take at least an hour to explain. Rather, pick up this book when you have a chance, called The Dharma Manifesto. It's available in many places, including Amazon. and it will explain to you precisely what is the program to bring this about. But thank you for that very, very good question. Very good. Here's another interesting question. Let me just check the time. I will probably just take a few more questions, actually, just due to time. But this is one that I will definitely ask. Namaste, Sri Acharyaji. How do we preserve Varnashrama Dharma in this day and age? Please elaborate. Good. Very good question. I have elaborated on this, again, multiple hundreds of times. Please watch our previous videos. And you'll see that what I'm about to say now is nothing new. People have asked me much more in-depth questions about Varna Ashrama, and I've given much more in-depth answers than I have time to talk about now. But let me just say several things. First of all, you say, how do we preserve? There is no preserving. Varna Ashrama does not exist today in institutional form. We have caste, the silly caste system, which really has nothing to do in spirit or in praxis with the actual Varnashrama system. So it's not a matter of preserving, it's a matter of reestablishing the Varna Ashrama system. Now, at the same time, this is something else that needs to be stated. The Varna Ashrama system can be seen in two distinct forms, i.e., as far as natural law and the let's say the existence of natural law versus institutionally. As far as Varna Ashrama seen via dharma, via natural law, it's always here. So in other words, you can look at any specific society and you'll see people who, if you look at them individually, they belong in one Varna or another, or they belong in no Varna. In other words, they are outside the Varna system. You just see this naturally in accordance with natural law. You can go to any society, observe people, and you'll say, yes, that person is a Brahmana. It is who they are inherently. Yes, that person is a Shudra. It is who they are inherently. So there is that versus what I believe you're actually speaking of, and that is Varna Ashrama institutionalized. That in and of itself is not currently in existence. Why? It doesn't exist anywhere. It's not legally recognized. It's not something that is organized. Again, we have the caste system, which is banned and outlawed in India. So even there, it's not institutionally recognized. It's just kind of carried on in a willy-nilly sort of way in accordance with one's birth and one's birth alone. That's caste system. That has nothing to do with Varna or Ashrama. Now, to go on a little bit more, the Varna Ashrama system is being revived very specifically and in the present moment by a movement, a global movement, a worldwide movement called the International Sanatana Dharma Society. We are reestablishing both Varna and Ashrama, these two separate but connected systems. We understand both systems more perfectly than any other people or movement upon the face of the earth today. Again, look at our previous videos, and there are many of them, where we discuss the Varna and Ashrama systems extremely deeply. And more, we have created the institutions within the International Sanatana Dharma Society such that they will be restored. If you're serious in your concern about this, then you'll do that exploration. Look at our previous videos, read our books, and specifically the Sanatana Dharma, the Eternal Natural Way, and join the International Sanatana Dharma Society. Once you do, you will see how we have recreated these institutions, first within our society, but then to be extended to all of society. So I hope that answers your question. Let me see if maybe there is one more question that won't be too long that I can answer. Give me a moment, please, as I look at these. Because again, I won't be able to answer them all because we've been going for almost an hour and a half, something like that. All right, I will answer this last question actually because it's quite nice and it's something that bears repeating. Again, I've answered this many times, but it's something that is good to remind people of. So let me read off this very nice question. Namaste, Guru. I want to thank you and your people for all that you do. Now especially is the time for the teachings of Sanatana Dharma. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for saying that, and indeed, now is the time. We need these teachings more than at any other time. But now your question. With that, the question is, what exactly is a deva, like Agni, Surya, etc.? Very good. Excellent question, because indeed, I've spoken about this multiple times in multiple previous videos that are out. Again, I always have to remind people, when you visit our channel, it's wonderful that you come to the live stream. I'm very grateful that you're here, but please look at our channel. We have playlists, dozens of them. We have hundreds and hundreds of videos stretching back 16 or 17 years in which we discuss pretty much everything that can be discussed about Sanatana Dharma. So for more elaboration on any of the questions that people have asked, look at our previous videos and you'll get very deep answers. Rather than just 5 minutes, you'll get an hour-long answer on your specific question, and this is one of them. So, very simply, this has been a cause of confusion for individuals for roughly the last 200 years, again, with the birth of Neo-Hinduism. This was a cause of confusion for non-Vedic individuals when they first began to encounter Sanatana Dharma during the colonial period, starting roughly 350 years ago, something like that. It remains a confusion to this day for people. And what is the confusion? What is the question? Very simply, all right, Sanatana Dharma believes, as any intelligent person would, that ultimately there is one supreme absolute. Necessarily, philosophically, there must be one supreme absolute. However, at the same time, when we look at Sanatana Dharma, or what sometimes people call Hinduism, what do we see? A multitude, mass of all sorts of devas and devis, gods and goddesses, gods and goddesses, gods and goddesses. What is the meaning of all this? Well, I've explained this many times. Let me explain it again. First of all, you're correct. These beings are called deva. Deva means quite literally a being of light. That's the Sanskrita. That's the translation of that. It is a being of light. What are these beings? These are beings who are extremely powerful, much, much more powerful than human beings, but they're not just powerful. See, it's very sad that today when people think of such things, they tend to think in terms of power. Oh, what is God? God is very powerful. They think of a Superman times 100. Oh, what is God? Oh, he can lift the Empire State Building just with his thumb, and on and on. They think of all sorts of silly things like this. No, it's not merely that the devas are powerful, but correspondingly, they are good. They are virtuous. They are individuals who are civilized, who are cultured. They are individuals who are spiritually advanced, etc., etc. And these are benevolent beings who are much higher than human beings, but they're not God. The Vedic scriptures, and again, feel free to doubt me, but you can look at our previous videos where we've commented on verse after verse after verse after verse after verse after verse throughout the Vedic scriptures, including the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna himself makes this clear. The devas are not God. The devas are subservient to God, somewhat similar as in, let's say, the Abrahamic religions. You have angels, and the angels are not God. They are subservient to God. Well, that's a cheap imitation of Sanatana Dharma, the Abrahamic religions having come way, way, way after Sanatana Dharma. But within Sanatana Dharma, there is the origination of this concept that these powerful beings are all servants of God. God being Sriman Narayana, in the highest name of God that's given in the Vedic scriptures. So there is God. There are those very powerful, benevolent beings who are servants of God, known as the Devas. And you mentioned two of them, Agni and Surya. There's Chandra, there's Varuna, there's Indra. There are, again, so many of these beings. And then there are humans. And then there are demons. There are demonic beings. And again, this is recognized throughout Sanatana Dharma as well as every other religion on the face of the earth. So this is who the Devas are, very specifically. They're more powerful than humans, And indeed, when it comes to the devas, they're not all the same. There are various strata of devas. There's a hierarchy. There are some devas who they're the less important ones. They will only live for like 1,000,000 years, and they have only so much power. Infinitely more power than a human does. Indeed, if even one of these lower echelon devas, let's say, were to come upon the earth today, we would think we were being visited by God. And that's the lower echelon devas. We would see a being who, these are part of the descriptions of the devas. When they do come to earth, and they do periodically, when they do visit the earth, you know that a deva is a deva and not just some human being pretending to be. This is why whenever you encounter fake gurus who will claim, oh yes, I am the incarnation of such and such. Yeah, right. This is how you know. When the devas actually come, their feet don't touch the earth. They levitate several inches above the earth. The devas don't blink. No, when I say don't blink, I don't mean that, they can just kind of stare at you and try to not blink for a minute or two, but then eventually they can't take it anymore. No, the devas don't blink, period. The devas have a divine luster to them, to the point where, I'm not exaggerating, you may not be able to even take the light coming from them with your bare eyes. You may have to wear some sort of protective goggles in order to even see the devas if they were to appear before you, etc., etc. These are indeed, quote-unquote, powerful beings, advanced beings, but they're not God. And interestingly, if it's a real deva, the first person who would tell you this would be the deva. They would immediately tell you, if you ask them, of course, it's not like they go around just telling people this for no reason. If you ask them, are you the Supreme? Are you God? They will tell you, no, I am a servant of Bhagavan. That's what the deva will say. I am a servant of God. So indeed, this is who the devas are. Again, I can go much deeper, but I have in the past. Those videos are available. Do a search for them on the Dharma Nation channel. Very good. So with that, sadly, we're going to stop here. I'm sure there are many more questions, but we're already over an hour and a half that we've been doing the live stream, so we will indeed stop here. Let me just tell people and remind people of several things before we go. First, again, we're going to be continuing with this series for several weeks. Next week, I'm going to begin commenting on the purport by Prabhupada upon this verse that we looked at today. So we'll be doing this for several weeks. The other thing is, I want to remind people that we indeed have an online discussion forum. It's on Discord. It's called the Dharma Nation server on Discord. The link should be there in the chat, so take a look in the chat when you can. And if you're not a member of that yet, please join. It is the International Sanatana Dharma Society discussion forum on Discord. And we have hundreds of devotees on there who are serious followers of the ISDS, and other individuals who maybe are a little bit new, but they're slowly learning. And the whole idea is it's not a free-for-all open discussion. Talk about anything you want. I'm here to talk about Islam and convert you. No, doesn't exist. This forum exists specifically to understand Sanatana Dharma exclusively and authentically. If that's what you would like, if you found this interesting, if this is maybe your first or still your somewhat recent encounter with Sanatana Dharma and you would like to learn more, join our Discord forum. And people there can answer your questions and help to guide you in such a way that you can grow spiritually upon this path. The other thing is, please visit dharmacentral.com when you can. That is the main website of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. dharmacentral.com. And many of our books are available there, books that I've mentioned, including this book here, which is our main philosophical work, Sanatana Dharma, The Eternal Natural Way. It's roughly 450, 60, 70, I forget, pages of outlining the totality of the philosophy of Sanatana Dharma. And again, in as authentic a way as you will find in any other book upon the face of the earth today. But this book and many of our other books are available on dharmacentral.com. You can also, please feel free to donate on there to the International Sanatana Dharma Society. Again, we can't do any of this without your donations. We are a a religious nonprofit, a 501c3, and indeed we need your help to bring this message of Sanatana Dharma to the totality of the world. So you can please feel free to donate to us there, and we will be very, very grateful. You can become a member, a tithing member of the International Sanatana Dharma Society as well, by visiting our website, dharmacentral.com. And with that, again, I hope that you will join us again next Sunday as we continue looking at the purport upon the verse that we just read. And with that, everyone, I ask you to please take very good care of yourselves, and namaste. Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
Surya Vamsha Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
Om Tat Sat. And with that, everyone, I leave you now with this message, this all-important message of Bhagavan Sri Krishna from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66, wherein he says, Ma Shuchaha. Do not fear.